In today's video, we will look at the mental model of inversion. Normally, we tend to think forward through a problem or decision. The mental model of inversion basically means to think backwards, to turning the subject matter into its reverse. Carl Gustav Jakob Jacobi, a German mathematician, uses mental model often in the domain of mathematics and famously said, "Man muss immer umkehren," which roughly translates means invert, always invert. The legendary investor Charlie Munger picked this mental model up and applied it to many areas of his life. And exactly this we also try to attempt today. In today's video we will look at the theory part of what is the mental model of inversion and the practical part of how to apply it and where we could possibly apply it. As mentioned before, inverse thinking is basically backward thinking to turning something into its reverse. The following is a better and more detailed explanation by Charlie Munger. The mental process that has really worked for me my whole life, and I use it all the time, is turning everything into reverse. I figure out what I don't like instead of figuring out what I like in order to get what I like. I sometimes think straightforward too, of course. But thinking of what I didn't like and how I can avoid it has just worked wonders for me, by Charlie Munger. What is the difference between forward and backward thinking? Forward thinking is considering what we want and thinking about steps to get it. What do we have to do to get it? Backward thinking is consider the opposite of what we want and avoid the opposite. What do we have to avoid? Thinking backwards doesn't necessarily bring us the same solution as thinking forward. Still, both ways of thinking imply indirectly the other way. Let's consider here the words from Charlie Munger. Just constantly invert. You don't think of what you want. You think what you want to avoid. Or when you are thinking what you want to avoid, you also think about what you want. And you just go back and forth all the time. By Charlie Munger. Let's move on to the first example and apply the mental model of inversion. It is a personal example about my goal of eating more healthy. So first I approached this goal with the forward-thinking question of what food is healthy to eat. And I did some research and I couldn't really figure out what is clearly all the time healthy to eat, maybe besides vegetables. But other than that, I couldn't really figure it out. So I approached the question and turned it into its reverse. So I asked myself, what food should I avoid? And somehow this is a much more easier question to answer because I should clearly avoid fast food and sugary beverages, for example. And by turning the question into its reverse and avoiding this reverse, I came closer to my goal to eat more healthy. The following example is one by Charlie Munger, who gave it at an annual shareholder meeting. And if somebody hired me to fix India, I would immediately say, what could I do if I really want to hurt India? And I had figured out all of the things that could most easily hurt India, and then I'd figured out how to avoid them. Now you would say it's the same thing, it's just in reverse. But it works better to frequently invert the problem. And you can help India best if you understand what will really hurt India the easiest and worst. Algebra works the same way. Every great algebraist inverts all the time because the problems are solved easier. Human beings should do the same thing in the ordinary walks of life. By Charlie Munger. Literally, we can use this mental model in our ordinary lives, as we have seen before in the example of eating more healthy food. And this we will also see in the next example of personal finance. In this example, on the topic of personal finance, we will use both forward thinking and backward thinking. So let's say my goal is to be comfortably wealthy, and whatever that means, because for everyone this is different. I could approach this goal now in the forward thinking fashion. I would reframe the goal in the question, how to become wealthy. And then I would ask myself, what are the steps to get more wealthy? And I would figure out the steps, and they could look like earn more money, invest better, and save more than I spend, and so on. Another way to approach this goal is by backward thinking or inverse thinking. Here I would reverse the question into how to avoid being completely broke. Because survival in the first place is of extreme importance because it is necessary for becoming wealthy. And then I would ask myself, what are the steps to avoid it? And the steps could look like, don't risk all my money in risky assets, save more than I spend, and so on. Considering the backward thinking approach, with most of my money, I would want to be really careful because in the first place, I want to survive. So I will put it on a saving account or I would invest it in not so risky assets. Considering the forward thinking approach, because I have to also earn more money, I could, of course, take another job or could invest a small amount of my money in higher risky assets, which have a higher gain potential. As we can see in our example, is that both ways of thinking can be implemented together. They often have different solutions because they approach the problem or the goal from a different angle. But still they can be implemented together and work together because ultimately they are focused on finding a solution for our problem or for our goal. And they can also overlap. In our example, we said that I can spend less than I save. As Charlie Munger recommends, we can use the mental model of inversion in our daily lives. I can talk from my perspective and I can say that it helped me a lot. What we saw before with the example of eating more healthy. And many of these problems or goals we have, we can approach by invert thinking. And somehow it is more easier to answer, at least for me, of what do I want to avoid. And when I avoid this, what I want to avoid, I came automatically to the goal I wanted to approach in the first place. Thank you so much for watching this video. And as always, I wish you a fantastic day.